I think I prefer the new music. You caught me dancing along. Massive welcome to you, 7,000 subscribers, to the next in our new series of the CISO Experience here on InfoSec Live, with what I think is a much more laid back yet slightly funky vibe to the intro music. Love to hear what you think about that. We're going to get to engage with and learn from another industry leader today. We have an amazing guest with extensive experience in Brent Deterding. But before we bring him on, I'm your host, Simon Lindstedt, and sharing stories and best practice over the last few months alone has led to nearly 100,000 views of our content here on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. And thanks to the support, it's also led to the launch of our in-person community-driven events, both in the UK and the US, with the focus on knowledge sharing, networking, and definitely no sales pitches. Check out our events page for more info. Link is in the description, with our next event on August the 31st in sunny Tampa Bay. Drop me a message if you'd like to find out more. Quick QR code for you to bring up here. Meanwhile, back in the community, using this link, we have study groups, mentor sessions, and regular networking sessions to help you raise your game in cybersecurity. Make sure you check out the community if you haven't already. And this is all thanks to Jason and Owen and all the team at Rapid7 for supporting our community efforts and making these insightful streams possible. Our organizations have great synergy, and we're super excited to see how we can serve the wider security community in 2023 and beyond. I'm going to drop another QR code now because they're available on Restream. This is for Rapid7's fundamentals site, where there are some amazing free resources on things like cloud security, vulnerability risk management, AppSec, detection and response. And of course, don't forget about their amazing open source tools such as Metasploit and Velociraptor, helping the InfoSec community. But if you'd like to support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed just buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a way you can show your appreciation here on our YouTube channel with 3 tiers of membership, allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We want to make these events as interactive as possible. So make sure you also drop any questions in the chat for the, for the AMA. Okay, time for Simon to stop talking for the moment, and let's bring Brent on. Few stumbles over the words there, Brent. Wasn't the best intro, but welcome.
No, I'm nervous. I do a lot of podcasts, a lot of speaking, but I've never had the intro with the cool funky music and the buildings. That's new to me.
Did you like? Nervous. And you just got back from Black Hat. I thought you'd be used to all the, as we Brits call, pomp and circumstance and flashy lights.
yes, lots of flashing lights. Lots of late nights and all that. I was only there for a couple of days, but I made the most of it, so it worked out.
I think, as many other people have said since they've arrived back, 2 days might have been just enough.
I think I could have gone 3, but after a 3 it gets a little. And I was on the vendor side, so I've worked those conferences before, and working in conference is way more intense than attending. But so all the vendors I feel your pain. I've been there, but done that, right?
I'll leave DEF CON and Black Hat to guys and girls like you. Seeing as I haven't had a drink for over 3.5 years now, it's probably the wrong place for me to go back to right now.
You know, it may not be the most conducive atmosphere. I'll say that.
Or I suppose it could be the best one to test my resolve, perhaps. Give it another year. We'll try next year,
Yeah, yeah,
perhaps.
I mean, you only get better when you face temptation a little bit, right? So
Absolutely. Look, Brent, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I think a lot of the people watching probably know who you are, but if we could kick off with you giving us a bit of a story, I suppose. We all love a story. We'd love
yeah,
to know how you got to where you got to today.
yeah. So I'm a little bit different than a lot of CISOs in a couple aspects. One is that I freaking love this job. My stress has never been lower. My satisfaction never been higher. It's awesome. That said, I am really kind of unique. And if someone knows, I would love to talk to another CISO who came from the vendor side. I worked on the vendor side for 19 years. I was employee number 21 with SecureWorks way back in 2003. 15 years in operations, 4 years in a global sales overlay kind of role. And I like vendors, but I love SecureWorks, but I left to become a CISO because there's only one of those per company, and we had a good one. So it took me a long time to find the right culture fit because coming from SecureWorks, culture was so important to me. So I wanted to find the right culture. Came here, found Afni, and just freaking love it. It's
And what do Afni do?
Afni is about 10,000 employees. We are a business process outsourcer, which is a cool way of saying that most of our business is running call centers for some really big, huge, well-known names. And we are heavily in the Philippines, also Mexico, also domestically here in the U.S. So it's kind of a cool environment for a CISO gig, like 10,000. Probably
So you picked an easy one, right?
yeah, like probably 11,000 employees. I interviewed to be a director under the CIO, and the offer came back to have me report to the CEO directly, which is kind of a cool little feather in the cap of a CISO, right? So it's cool. Like I said, I love it.
I think that could answer. Alana put, "Is he lying?" when you said that, that you loved it and you weren't stressed. Do you think, all joking aside, so the fact that you're reporting to the CEO must make a huge difference?
I think it can. I don't think it has to. So I identified. Keep in mind, I interviewed to be a director under the CIO. So I interviewed the CIO thinking I'm going to report to this guy, right? And my whole focus was, can I succeed in this environment? Is it the culture that I like? Can I succeed? And it was. So I was going to be perfect happy and felt that I could be 100% successful reporting to him. That didn't change when he and I are peers. That doesn't change. It works out well. And a big part of that is, it's an old Bob Dylan song. The country I come from is called the Midwest. So my company is based about an hour and a half south of where I live now, and just next door to where the town my wife grew up in. So talking to the CIO is like talking to my best man at my wedding. The CFO reminds me of my father-in-law. The CEO reminds me of my wife.
And that must be a good thing, because it's not for all of us, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's great, right? So it's a very comfortable environment, right? I mean, like, just ever think about it. It's like, I've known you people my entire life, because I know a million people just like you. And so it's a very easy environment for me to just operate in on a day-to-day basis. And and we're international and all that. I've worked with people all over the globe. It's fine. It's just very, very easy because it's like my neighbors, right? So
did it take a lot of searching to find that right company with the right culture, or were you lucky?
I interviewed for about a year. So when I first started interviewing, I realized that I was saying I wanted to be an executive CISO, right? And everyone was like, but we need to do this. And I was like, and it was push the buttons. It was being a technical leader. And I'm like, I spent 20 years with lead in my title, caring a lot about my technical acumen. And I set that down. I quit telling other people I was technical. I quit telling myself that I was technical. I don't have access to any of my team's tools, right? Because I was like, if I'm going to be a technical leader, I'm going to stay where I am. I love it. I'm happy. I love SecureWorks, right? But if I'm going to be an executive, then I need to go all in on being an executive and not at all technical. Other people, I know other CISOs do both well. Not saying it can't be done. I'm saying that for me and where I wanted to take my career, I wanted to focus entirely on being that executive. It's actually executive first, risk person second, cyber person third, right?
It seems to be somewhat of a challenge for some people who are thrust into a CISO role, reporting to the board from a technical background. It seems like you've made that transition seem pretty easy. Is that because of the experience you've had in technical management before, or what do you think has made you so successful at this transition to the executive leadership?
Unbridled confidence and unjustified arrogance. I don't know.
You're definitely not arrogant, Brent. Definitely not.
I don't. Truth be told, being a CISO is like having a whole second career. This wasn't just a next step. It was a career transition in my experience, because there's a lot I don't know. Like, for example, I've been talking with fundamentally technical people for 20 years, all day, every day, whether they were sales, marketing, developers, SOC analysts, CISOs, CIOs, etc. They're technical people. Guess what I've not interacted with a lot for 20 years? Lawyers and accountants, right? Yeah. I mean, a little bit, right? But in client services, yeah. But I mean, a lot of new types of people, and I've had to kind of figure out some of that, because I've been observing people and figuring out what people's incentives are, how they behave, when they behave, how to interact, how to get things done, how to build rapport, all of that with a certain subset of people. And now it's a whole different thing. So it's been challenging, but also a lot of fun to figure out some of this stuff. And to a large extent, I don't approach it as, hey, here's how you do it. I approach it like, what do you guys want me to, how do you want this to work? Like, I can do a whole lot of different stuff. Right? I mean, well, I can talk about frameworks and maturity models. I can do this. I can do whatever. And then listening to what my other executives say. And, I used to say in sales that, like, passion overcomes a whole lot of stuff. It's like, guess who doesn't notice if you say, if you have little verbal tics? If you're passionate and know what you're talking about and believe it in your bones, that resonates. Right before I left SecureWorks, I did an exec briefing and down in Atlanta, and the guy was like, I buy it, but that guy believes that in his bones. And I was like, yes, I do. I didn't tell him that it was Wednesday, my last day was Friday, but I believed it in my bones still. Like,
this is the importance of being able to tell a story, though, right? And I think
exactly.
You hit a very good point. It's all very well having the bravado, the confidence, and the passion. However, if you don't have the deep-rooted knowledge and understanding, it's very difficult to have that confidence to stand up in front of people.
Yeah,
which is why I've never pretended to be an expert at anything, and I just talk to people who know what they're doing, like you. It makes my job easier.
Oh yeah, I see it coming from James. That's fun. So I had a misstep with one of my messages, and what was very interesting to me is that people who know me well and have known me well for many years took it two very, very different ways. One way, like half the people, more than half, took it exactly how I intended. Like, oh, I get it. I totally get it, right? And other people took it a completely different way. And that was convicting to me, because if I'm communicating, it's on me to make sure that my message is received. It's beyond just I communicated it. It is, hey, that was received in a way different way different way than I intended it to be, and that's on me. And that had collateral damage other than just me, and that was hard. And so I ended up, I had a post, I deleted it, it went way sideways. Twitter blew up all over me and stuff, and it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot because one, it reinforced the message that you're responsible not only for how you communicate, but how it is commonly received. And if it's one person, whatever, right? But a lot of people took it a completely different way, and that was, I mean, I had to learn.
The only way you're talking to someone here who's made more mistakes than probably anyone you've ever met, and whilst I regret some of them, the one thing I don't regret is the learning potential I've had after each one.
Well,
and I think you've got to be a certain type of person, though, Brent, to take that on board. You see a lot. Well, my point is, you see a lot of people on LinkedIn who wouldn't have reacted that way. They'd have reacted very defensively, very egotistically.
And you know what was great about it is, one, I was like, well, if someone's going to suck, I better take a lot of lessons out of it, right? And so I did. But it also led to at least 2 or 3 pretty good relationships afterwards. And what was funny, I talked to a guy a couple weeks ago, actually, who chimed up on that thread and was like, hey, if you really want to learn, if you really want to know where you're wrong about this, where you're misinformed, I'll talk. And I was like, all right. And that was back in April, and I just talked to him a couple weeks ago, but we had a great talk. We talked for over an hour, and it was funny because he got crap because he was going to engage with me. And I was like, what the world, man? Like, if you can't engage with people that you may disagree with, and at the end of the day, there's very, very little light between us at all. He's like, oh yeah, like your position is just fine. I'm like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I mean, for God's sakes. So, but that's yeah.
That probably leads us really nicely. Sorry, it probably leads us really nicely back to something you were talking about a moment ago. And I'm not putting these words in your mouth. This is my perception of how it may have been for you learning to deal with lawyers, C-suite people after dealing with techies. And that's the word ego. Has that reared its ugly head? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
So I've dealt with a wide variety of people for 20 years, right? So being that when you run an operations center, and you're the SOC manager guy, like you deal with good, you deal with pissed off people too. And often you're dealing with people who are having a bad day, right? If you catch a bad guy, they're having a bad day. It's not when they're at their best, I should say, right? And so you learn how to diffuse those situations, and you learn how to build rapport. And because people are more willing to dogpile on and yell at a stranger than they're someone that they have some semblance of relationship with. So that's pretty critical, right? And even when you just come into it, but it's one of those, if people know you to be a reasonable individual all the time, then when they disagree with you and they know you to be very open and open-minded, then they are willing to engage you. They give you a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And if you have a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, hey, I'm good to go. Because I screw up. That's fine, right? But if you're passionate, if you care, it's an Alan Alford phrase, but I fiercely give a shit, right? Like I really, really care a lot. And if you really, really care and you have good intentions, that goes a really long, because people in general are willing to forgive and have grace. And I extend that to others. I extend that to clients, my team, other teams within my organization. Like empathy is a good thing no matter who you are, right? So
well, it's funny you mentioned the empathy word, because it's what's been going through my mind after you said those people who are having a bad day. It's not everyone, Brent, that can identify someone's having a bad day, and that's why they're reacting like that. And I think the whole empathy part, especially with people under pressure and under stress, trying to understand why they're feeling like that, what's happened to them, and importantly for everyone, being able to take a moment before you react to people. I mean, and this is outside of work, driving in the car, for example, you know, you get road rage incidents, people going, rah, frothing through the window. I really, really try not to react because you don't know what's happened to that person.
So, two things. I have a statement that I say a lot, which is significant risk reduction is simple, easy, and cheap. Simplest technology statement, easy is people process, cheap is cheap. Okay. The aspect of that, though, is that this is virtually no problems that we have in cybersecurity are technology. We have the technology. That's fine, right? It is the people process, right? Which also means that a big chunk of how well I do my job is not about technology and tools. It's about people. It's about leadership. It's about empathy. That's the professional aspect of that. The personal aspect is that by nature, I am about the least empathetic person I know.
So it's a learned ability as well.
Absolutely 100% is. And I lack empathy with myself, but I like to think I do better with other people. One thing, well, there have been many cases where empathy was 10 years ago or so. I started really praying about that a lot for God to grant me some empathy and a softer heart. But one aspect is my wife and I dealt with infertility for 5 years, right? And so during that time, you come to realize that everyone is going through something all the time. So I would go to a friend's kid's birthday party and I would have to kind of deflect things because my wife was in the bathroom crying, right?
Yeah.
And so you really learn, you really see and have it hammer home that like things are okay on the surface, right? But there's some big existential things you're going through. And you come to realize that everyone is going through something. And if you like fiercely give a shit and care about people and stuff, then that also applies. And then that has led into my wife and I, we had an infertility. We're adoptive parents and we're foster parents. So
hey. I say yay. My adoptive parents, who adopted me when I was a few weeks old, my mum had a hysterectomy, I think it was, when she was in her early 30s and couldn't have children. And she probably regrets the day she adopted me for a long time. But you know what? We've had challenges throughout our relationships. I mean, my mum and dad split up, my adopted parents, when I was 13. I went off the rails a bit, put my mum through absolute hell, probably. But I tell you what, it doesn't have to be blood. Every day now, my mum's end of life with Parkinson's. Every day I visit her in that care home, and every day I enjoy every minute that I spend with her because I finally realised, you know, how much she loved me, and despite the fact that we're different, it's an amazing thing. So I take my hat off to you for the adoption and especially for the fostering. If we didn't have 6 children, my wife said the other day about fostering a child.
Oh man,
I'm a little bit too old now.
The great thing is, and we have an organization around us called Called Care. And here's what I love about it. Not everyone is cut out to be a foster parent. I'm not positive that we are, honestly, but everyone is called to care, right? And there are a lot of ways that you can help the foster community and help kids in need, and independent of what anyone says or thinks anything about politics or any of that. Like, I can love on some kids. Like I can have my beliefs, have my whatever, but at the end of the day, like no one's going to say that I don't put my money where my mouth is. And not money is one thing, but time is another. Time
is the most precious commodity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sacrifice, right? I mean, it's sacrifice. You don't do it because it's a good time. I'll say that there's plenty of opportunity for messed up things and all.
But there's also an awful lot of reward with that as well on the flip side. Maybe not as much in the early days, hey Brent, but there is reward.
It works out like any kids, right? It's just, and that was one thing with adoption, especially, is that early on you kind of worry a little bit. You're like, well, this kid won't be biologically mine. It's not my blood. Is there going to be inner barrier? And everyone says, no, there's not. There's no barrier. And you're like, I don't know, and there's not. No. There's not at all. But then you come to realize, you're like, okay, so a child doesn't have to be biologically mine for me to love this child, right? And love them as fully as my own. And the curious thing with foster care is that you don't hold your heart back, right? You don't hold off and say, oh well, they're not legally mine. No. You don't do that. You love the kid as if they were yours for as long as you have them. And I've had
that must be tough though, Brent. That comment there, for as long as you have them. That's the one, the tugger, isn't it?
You sign up to get your heart stomped.
Yeah.
And you also have, I'm in front of how many thousand people? Why not be transparent? 2 hours ago, I said goodbye to my foster daughter. So,
Brent.
And she had only been with us about 5-6 weeks. But here's the hard part. It just was not a fit for my household.
Yeah.
And making the decision to maybe further traumatize the little girl, hopefully not, but maybe, right? That's not easy. And
no.
and everyone can criticize or think or and all this. And it's hard because, way more so than what someone thinks about my opinion on encryption on LinkedIn is what do my friends or my church or other people think about my decision to say there's a lot of sacrifice in this.
I think that the thing that's coming across here more than anything, and Justin Merhoff in the comments has backed this up. I've just noticed the comment in there. You've done what you think is the best thing for that child. And I don't think you can do any more than that. And that comes from, as Justin said, Justin was a foster kid as well.
Yeah, it's
thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I mean, I think we're here to talk about CISOs and the experience of being a CISO, but let's be honest. People don't really want to hear about that. People want to hear about people, and they want to hear about what drives them and what they do with their lives. So thank you so much for sharing. There is quick encouragement for people watching. If you've got any questions you want to ask Brent, please do drop them in the chat. I've got one that I'd like to kick off with, which is kind of relates to the events that we're holding in Tampa at the end of August. So the topic for that is the opportunities and challenges of a modern CISO. And I want to take it a step past that and ask you where you think the role, or what you think the role is going to evolve into, because I've only been in this industry for nearly 3 years now, and I've already seen a change in what that job role kind of means. So would you mind talking to us about that?
Sure. Yeah, my phrase on this is that I am currently doing and wrestling with things that they didn't teach me in CISO school, right?
Yeah.
Which there isn't one, but
You've said it online now. By next week there will be.
Yeah. Maybe. So I aspire to be an executive first, a risk person second, and a cyber person third, right? And as part of that, you're not allowed to go to any event and not say, we must speak the language of the business. If you don't say that, they kick you out, I'm pretty sure, right? So, but understanding what that really means is, I think, an evolving thing, because one of my mentors is Eric Cole, right? And he relayed this story where he was sitting with the CEO and a CFO, and they're like, "Oh, it's time for the monthly CISO meeting or whatever to come in." And the CISO came in and he talked about all this stuff, right? And then afterwards, they're like, oh, thank God that's over. Okay. And he was like, wait a minute. So we went out and he chit on the CISO. And he was like, hey, how did you think that went? He's like, oh, I killed it. I killed it. They understood it. They resonated. It was awesome. They support me. This is great. And he was like, so and nothing against any of the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful CISOs that I know, but I don't necessarily trust their opinion, nor do I necessarily trust my own opinion on how good I'm doing or not doing resonate with other executives. Or I'm a private company or a board of directors, right? And so I think we have to step outside of our own little bubble of cybersecurity and hear what other people are talking about and other people are saying. So SEC rule came out, 187 pages, 3,000 mentions of materiality or whatever. It's not 3,000, but like whatever it is. Right?
Yeah.
And so I go to my VP of finance and I go to my CFO and I go, hey, what's material mean to you? And they're like, oh boy, right? They've been wrestling with that for decades, right?
Yeah.
So they get that. And, I go to my CEO or I want to hear what boards of directors say, right? So I'm involved with Digital Director Network, right? And I am looking at NACD Accelerate for public directors, right? Stuff like that. So what did they say that they need to hear from the CISOs? And what they're asking for and what they want and what CISOs are delivering are two different things, by and large, right? Not 100%. So that conversation is not going away. The aspects of cyber risk quantification, what boards care about, materiality, D&O, insurance, personal liability, corporate liability.
Just confirm, Brent, if you don't mind, what you mean by, for my layman's perspective. I've got my own idea of what materiality means from a business perspective, but what does that mean for you as a CISO?
So I've got to figure that out right now. So it's not just financial, right? It is because let's say you're a public company and let's say you're a $10 billion company, right? But let's say $100,000 impact makes a difference between positive earnings per share and negative earnings per share. That's material. Yeah. Or let's say you have a series of smaller events that in aggregate become a material event. So all of a sudden we're talking about systemic risk, materiality, things like that. And that is not, it's not an accounting number. It's not a objective standard. It is subjective, but that involves discussions amongst executives with finance, with legal, with all the people, right? And that leading that conversation is not historically been something that CISOs are really good at, right?
True.
Yeah. And that's moving. That's what I'm talking about, moving from a cyber to a risk person to an enterprise executive, right?
Yeah.
So Phil asked a question here. What advice do I have for aspiring leaders moving from technical to leading security teams?
Let me give you a little bit of background on Phil. So Phil lives in the UK, based in Cambridge, and he heads up the security for a gaming company. So don't let him fool you into thinking he's a noob to the industry here. But I think he works for a reasonably small business, and he's taken the step. Sorry for talking about you, Phil, by the way. He's taken the step from a more hands-on keyboards role a couple, 3 years ago now to more of a leadership role. If that helps with the perspective.
That's fantastic. The first piece of advice I have is to decide what you want, because you can be a rock star technical person and get paid a whole lot of money. And you can also be an executive. I think it is a very rare person who can do both.
It's what you enjoy as well, right?
Yes. So, example, I've talked to a lot of people who said, I don't think I could ever be a CISO because I got to be able to, I want to do it. Like in their soul, they need their technical acumen. And that's completely fine, right? 100% fine. but I think there are a lot of CISOs in role that would probably be much happier being deputy CISOs, because a deputy CISO is, in my mind, still a very technical resource who doesn't, it's not so much that they push the buttons, but they can mentor and lead the people who do the button pushing. Let them do that, right? I decided that my role, I wanted to be purely an executive, a strategic leader. There are probably 4 or 5 different people have different definitions, but probably 4 or 5 different archetypes of CISOs. You can be a GRC person, you can be executive, you can be a builder, you can be an engineer. There's all these different things, right? So first is decide what you want to be, right? And you can be one hell of a technical leader and not be a CISO. That's fine. So that's a really, really big one to me, is what do you want to do?
I think that's key in life, isn't it? Not even dependent on industry or career. I think it took me until I was 46 years old to work out what I actually enjoyed doing, rather than what I thought I should be doing, which was this glamorous image of being a big CEO with loads of staff. When you get to that point and you have that, and you realize that every day you hate it and it's stressful, you have to then take a step back and work out what it is you want. But Phil said, yeah, great answer, thanks. So got another quick question that was dropped in earlier from Emmanuel. What's your view on CISOs with hiring talents with no certifications? This comes up every week. So, thanks, Emmanuel.
So let me tell you my background. I ran an operations center for a whole lot of years, meaning that I have hired, trained, mentored many hundreds of people, in a whole lot of different roles. I've had people sitting next to one another doing the same job who had a master's degree in engineering and all sorts of certs, next to someone who had 0 of that. The most technical person on the planet that I know went to Carnegie Mellon, has master's degrees, all that stuff. The second most technical person I know does not have his associate's degree. Either of them are amazing, right?
Yeah.
Flat out amazing. I personally do not care about certs.
Okay? Yeah.
Not at all, right? But especially for entry-level stuff, I care about 80 to 90% about personality characteristics, not head knowledge. I jokingly say that I can teach a reasonably intelligent monkey how to drive in 6 months, right? Like, I can cram knowledge in heads. That's not a problem, right? I can put you in experience. What I can't do is teach you passion and grit and coachability, right? So
that's the word. Coachability is something that doesn't come up all the time, but boy, are you not wrong on that one.
Yeah, I mean, grit and coachability. Now all that is like, okay, you can be the most gritty, coachable, resilient person ever, but does that get you a job? Well, for that, there are way better experts out there than I am. Mike Miller on LinkedIn is amazing, right? As far as breaking into cyber. For that, I am a big proponent of LinkedIn and putting out a personal brand. And I forget the guy's name now, but he was a student at Purdue. He started putting in LinkedIn content. He got connections going. He got him his internship. It's going to get him his job. I mean, you don't have to be super extroverted. You don't have to come up I'm telling you, man, there is nothing new under the sun. Nothing I write on LinkedIn is amazing, insightful that no one else has ever thought of. I maybe package it a little bit differently. I maybe have an analogy. I maybe hit the right timing. Whatever.
It's your personality, Brent. It's you that's showing through, and I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, coachability, grit, resilience, passion. Back in the day, my favorite interview question was, "Tell me about your home lab." And if someone got all geeked up talking about the home lab, I was like, "Man, I like that." Now I've actually changed that a little bit since. Now it is whatever you're geeked up about. Like, get geeked up about it. Tell me about it. And you see that passion. You see someone really, really going, right? Oh, let's see here. I missed Lou's comment. It's below my.
Oh, I've starred them. I've starred them. We've got 3 other questions to go through. Before we do that,
Sure.
I'm not sure if Jason Carrico was one of the ones you were with in Vegas
He
this week.
was. I was with him.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I'm all about helping and sharing other people's resources that are valuable to the community. And I know what Danny Wolf and the team at Audience First are doing is pretty special.
It is.
Do you want to just take a few minutes talking about what you've been doing in Vegas this week and give them a bit of a shout out?
Yeah. So I have met with 130 vendors this year, 45-minute meetings, right? Yeah, that's a lot, right? And I wear a different hat, whether I'm being pitched or whether I'm giving my opinion and advice.
Of course.
And
one's bulletproof with perspex on the front.
Yeah. And so I start talking to Danny because my perspective is a bit unique coming from the vendor side, right? And trying to help the industry, help vendors and clients kind of get along a little bit better and try to explain what and why and how. And I'm not the only perspective. One thing I loved, I was with Danny Wolf and Audience First and Black Hat this Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday, we had a CISO track. And it was just CISOs talking among CISOs about 3, 4, 5 topics, right? And it was fantastic. I loved it, right? Then on Wednesday, we had a handful of vendors come in who wanted opinion. They didn't want to pitch us. They wanted opinion. And they were able to say things like, hey, we're trying to reach this level of the organization. Here's how. What do you think? And in the room were Andres Andrew, Chris Roberts, John Underwood, Chris Elliott, and myself, which I'm honored to be considered in that company, right? And we don't pull any punches, right? I mean, we said exactly what, and they were eager and there to learn. And that is so valuable for vendors to get that perspective. So, and I've never seen this happen, right, elsewhere. So I've never seen an event like that where it's like, hey, instead of pitch me, it's like, hey, tell me what you think. All right, it's not about leads, it's not about KPIs, it's about helping them, because fundamentally security people are service oriented. We are fundamentally trying to protect and serve other people, right? And so we are generally willing, if someone is willing to listen, we are willing to help. And I loved it because it wasn't just me, right? We had 5, 6 different, very different opinions, and they get there. And we're talking not to a seller or a C, but we're talking to CEOs and CPOs and CROs and all those kind of folks. So that was fantastic. I just love it, right?
Do you know what? That's so good to hear. So from a non-industry expert point of view, but with 20 odd years business experience coming into this industry for the last 2.5, nearly 3 years, there's been an awful lot on LinkedIn and beyond of CISOs moaning about vendors' approach and telling them what they can't do and how not to do it. But what I haven't seen enough of is telling them how to do it and what product they need. I mean, we're seeing all of these startups come in with no input from leadership because they think they've got the next thing, which is normally, or not normally, sometimes just a regurgitation of an existing tool that's already on the market and not needed. And if CISOs gave up more of their time to help shape these businesses as they came in, that's the way we make a difference to the industry, I think. If the vendors and the leaders actually start working together, who knows? It might be a bit better, do you think?
I'm trying to
stranger things will happen.
I'm trying to create a movement. I'm like Alice's Restaurant Massacre. I'm trying to start a movement here, right? So it's,
I love it. I love it. Let's bring up these questions. We've only got a few minutes left. So where are we? Phil's, you've done. Lou Covey. Do you know Lou? Let me move you to the top. Lou is one of the brightest journalists in the industry that I know. Has a magazine called Cyber Protection Magazine. His question is, most companies I meet are overwhelmed by the messaging. It doesn't help their decision processes. I think he might be talking about the vendors here. They need to be able to think like an actual CISO. So how do you filter it all out to make an actual decision?
So
question.
I may be taking this the wrong way, so please do correct me, Lou. So vendors one. The best way to know how CISOs think is to ask them and talk to them, and that starts with it not being cringy, right? That starts with like, don't ask me something when we don't have a relationship, right? It all starts with the relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I talk to how many companies, I give away a lot of my time, right? And I freely give advice, but they've got to reach out to me in some form of not cold way, right?
Yeah.
And it literally is like, hey, I read your post and liked it. Can we talk?
Yeah.
Fine.
No.
The bar is really low, right? Or what I love, because people say, well, yeah, all these companies spend massive amounts of money. Doesn't cost that, right? So, give you an example. I had a warm outreach when I was a brand new CISO last year from Grip Security. Okay. And they talked to me, and cool tech, not for me. There's some reasons why that I love the tech. I've recommend them, all that. They sponsor, or they are one of the sponsors for C-Vision events. I really, really like C-Vision. They don't abuse vendors. Top notch, right? I went out to dinner last year. I took time away from my family to specifically go out last year with 4 people. One guy who sent me a handwritten note after my dad died, a reseller who I'm personal friends with, a personal friend of mine, and one company that I wanted to just professionally know and network with, right? This year, Grip Security comes in. They're like, hey, we're gonna be coming into Chicago. Would you like to come out to dinner? I was like, yeah, I will come hang out with them. Right? What do you think dinner costs them? A couple $1,000, right?
Yeah.
I'll go hang out with them. I like them, right? I know them right away. There are definitely people doing this. I saw Jacob Friedman is on from 3 Trade Tech. Their tech scout.
Amazing guy.
They do this really well. Yeah. So forming the relationships is key, because what also happens is there are technologies that I don't buy, but you know what I did? I recommended them to a bunch of other people because I think it's good tech. And I went to RSA and I met with their executives, and I told their CEO and their chief revenue officer that their seller, Abnormal Security, Mike Santelli is the seller, was the best damn seller that I've seen. And I told them why I thought that, right? And so I will, CISOs talk, I promise.
Yeah.
Right? So that relationship can both hurt you and it can hurt you if you suck, right? And I know it's a numbers game, right? And people are like, oh, we get 1 to 3%. I'm like, yeah, but then you're pissing off 97%. And
yeah, you are.
Here's what Jason Grayco just challenged me on. So
Bourbon trial.
I'm talking not only to sellers and SEs, right? But I'm talking to CROs and CMOs and all that. And so I started doing this on Wednesday, actually, Jason, after we talked on Tuesday night. And so I challenged them. They're like, yeah, it's hard relationships and all this. I'm like, then walk.
But it's not, right? Because this doesn't feed down to how the sales team is structured, remunerated, and
so I said,
not frustrated at all by this.
I said, walk it. There is your demand gen manager. I was talking to the CEO. I said, there's your demand gen manager. If you require his people to have X 200 whatever dials or emails or reach outs or connections, I'm like, that's going against what we want. This is how you do it. And I give them examples of what good looks like, how well it works. I'm like, talk to whomever about how much they're spending on outbound DGR kind of stuff. 0. Yet they're kicking ass. They're kicking ass because they're taking a relationship-based approach. In between Danny Wolf, Chris Roberts, 3 Tree, Jason, people, at some point we're going to get some traction on this. I'm convinced.
I think automation's been a marvelous thing in lots of ways. I think it's also killed the initial approach on sales. 3 or 4 years back, people weren't so adverse to getting those cold approaches on their LinkedIn. But when you're getting 20, 30 a day that are clearly automated, clearly not personal, it just gets to the point where it isn't working. And you said it earlier, some companies are like, well, we don't care, 3% or 2% we get back, then that's a win. But it's not a long-term game like that, because as you said, they're pissing off the other 97, 98% of people for future business.
Yep.
I suppose this is why all new vendors try and recruit established salespeople who've already got relationships in the industry, right?
Yeah, and like part of me almost wants to like go get a side gig as a DGR just to prove that my method works, right?
Yeah, please do.
I'm kind of convinced it does, but like I don't know, like and it's always hard because it's not like I'm not saying that I'm the best DGR, SE seller, whatever ever. I'm just saying like, hey, here's what resonates with me, and you can decide whether other CISOs are like me or not like me, and in some ways, both are true. I see Jason mentioned having a Bourbon Trail event.
I
I
saw
love
that.
it.
Yeah,
I'm all about trying to figure out how to make that happen because that is all about relationships. But here's the deal, and this is what C Vision has done so damn well. If we're going to a conference and there's rented a space and food and people and topics and all this, that doesn't happen for free, right?
no.
And that means that there are vendor sponsors, and I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is speed dating. Like, oh, I miss all my content because I got.
Oh well, look, I'm gonna have to jump in here. So you might not know, but my full-time job now is hosting events for leadership in security, and I just want to say a massive thank you to Apexa IQ, 360 Advanced, Proofpoint, Red Alpha. I'm trying to think of all of them in case I don't get them all in. There's so many who've sponsored our events so far, and Ballast Services who've come back to sponsor future events.
Yeah,
because there's no sales pitches. And Carlos, who's watching this show at the moment, he was one of our first sponsors at 360 Advanced for our Tampa event back in April. And I know for a fact that there's business being transacted, not because there was no sales pitches, but because relationships have been developed.
yes.
And as you said earlier, you might not need that person's service or solution at the time, but if you engage with them, you like them, you build a relationship with them, guess who you're going to call when you do?
100%.
Thanks, Carlos.
100%. Yes. And so it's a balance between like, hey, we get that we're here because of vendors sponsoring this, and that's okay. So let's not abuse them, but also let's not make it a vendor pitch show either, right? Like there's a middle ground there, and that's that middle ground is where it's at, right?
It is
100%.
Definitely. We've got 3 questions and 2 minutes left, so let's see if we can do these. Where are we? Here we go. Itza first. Let's do this one. What kind of soft skills should an aspiring CISO hone in on early in their career? Good question.
Figure out how to be right and not be an asshole.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm writing that down
because so often as technical people, especially, which is where a lot of people start, right? You can be technically right and you don't get anything done because everyone's like, yeah, he's right, but he's an asshole. And maybe maybe I'm projecting, but that was a big limiting factor for me, and in turn influences how I lead and parent my 11-year-old son, because he has my brain. And I'm like, dude, you're right, but you're kind of being an asshole. So we gotta figure
wind it in. Yeah. Thank you, Brent. That's a great answer. Final question is from my man Carlos Guerrero. What do you think about the BISO position?
In general, I'm a fan. In general, I'm a fan. I think
is it business dependent position, business type dependent? Do you think, or size dependent?
CISO is.
Yeah.
There are CISOs that I would be very okay working with as a BISO, and then there are others where like I don't have a great deal of experience here, but like my impression is that it can either be kind of like a bunch of right-hand men, or it could be like a punching bag for the business who doesn't really understand. I don't know. So don't take that with a grain of salt. But in general, I'm a fan if it's done well. But I suspect it can be done poorly. So
that's it. No, I think that's a very careful answer without dropping yourself in it, but also made a lot of sense, Brent.
I was in a room on Tuesday with a BISO that I loved. I was like, that's freaking amazing. I like that guy. I like the role, right? but I've also seen others who I'm like, I don't know about that one. So,
No,
see.
thank you. Okay, I think we're out of time. Well, I know we're out of time. There's no thinking about it. Brent, it's been absolutely amazing and insightful. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on. Any last words of wisdom before I wrap things up and go and enjoy the weekend with the family?
No, man. Let's sun is shining. My pool just got finished, so let's wrap it up. Thank you for all
Sounds
the
good.
comments, dude. This was fun. This is a great time, man. This is great.
Oh, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I mean, to be honest, it's a lot of it is down to the engagement we get. The people who tune in really do make these shows, I think, a lot more engaging than some others out there. But I'm going to play a quick little video now and then finish off with a comment about why I've played this, because it relates to what we've been talking about. So bear with me a second.
Sounds good.
So you can't actually register for free below, but you can if you find the LinkedIn post. So based on the feedback from all the CISOs I've spoken to since starting this show, and all the conferences I've been to in the last couple of years, we're going to try and mix things up a bit. So
Nice.
we're doing a pilot in London on February the 1st. Main sponsors Rapid7. We're looking for other sponsors, but this is not going to be your usual conference. We're going to have 2 or 3 talks. That's it. And every vendor who sponsors has to bring along something tangible for people to learn from. So it's going to be a hands-on conference there'll be a leadership lounge, there'll be a noob village, there'll be focused areas and all the different, there'll be a CTF by Rapid7. We'll obviously have a lockpicking village because everyone loves lockpicking. And we've also got the UK government's bug sweeping expert to come in to talk about that as well. So what we're trying to do is make it more hands-on, more involved, and obviously free.
Cool.
For everyone, and you don't get different levels of participation. So if you come along, you get access to everything. So sales pitch done. Phil's mentioned merch. Justin Merhoff has said, Brent, he'd love to talk to you about accessibility in cyber. So hopefully you can connect afterwards.
Yeah,
but everyone and Brent, thank you so much for your time. Have an amazing weekend and see you all soon.
Take it easy, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.